Maisie, Thomas began, you will remember that during the last war, many refugees from Belgium flooded into Britain. Maisie nodded. How could she forget? Over 250,000 people had entered the country, fleeing the approaching German army, the terror of bombing and occupation. Most had lost everything except the clothes they stood up in, homes, loved ones, neighbours, and their way of life. Everything they owned left behind in the struggle. At one point, over 16,000 people were landing in the coastal ports every single day. Thomas continued, from Hull to Harwich and on down to Folkestone. It went on for months. And yet after the war they left so little behind, said Maisie. When they left they might never have been here in England, isn't that true? Yes, they were taken in, and in some areas there were even new towns built to house them. They had their shops, their currency, and after the armistice, Britain wanted the refugees out and their own boys home. And I'm sure the Belgian people had a desire to return to their country too. Of course they did. They wanted to start again, to rebuild their communities and their lives. But some stayed, said Maisie. Yes, some stayed, Thomas nodded, staring into the garden. Maisie noticed that Francesca Thomas had not said we when referring to the Belgians, and she wondered how the woman felt now about the heritage she had claimed during the war. In truth, she was as much British as she was Belgian. Maisie wondered if in serving the latter she had mined a strength she'd not known before, just as Maisie had herself discovered more about her own character in wartime. She rubbed a hand across her forehead, a gesture that made Thomas look up and resume speaking. There are estimates that up to 7,000 or 8,000 remained after the war. They had integrated into life here, had married locally, taken on jobs, changed their names if it suited them. They didn't stand out, so there was an integration, I suppose you could say. Thomas gave a wry smile. But life's not easy for any refugee, said Maisie. Indeed. They went from being welcomed as the representatives of poor little Belgium to their hosts wondering when they would be leaving, and often quite vocal about it. And although there were those villages set up, they were not places of comfort or acceptance in the longer term. But, as I said, most refugees went home following the war. Tell me what all this has to do with me and how you believe I can help you. Thomas nodded. Forgive me, Maisie. I am very tired. There's been much to do in my world, as I'm sure you might understand. I begin to speak about the war, and a wash of fatigue seems to drain me. Maisie leant forward. Such candour was not something she'd experienced in her dealings with Thomas. She remembered training with her last year, before her assignment in Munich. Thomas had drilled her until she thought she might scream no more. But the woman had done what she set out to do, which was to make sure Maisie had the tools to ensure her own safety and that of the man she'd been tasked with bringing out of Munich under the noses of the Nazis. Now it was as if this new war was already winning the battle of bringing Thomas down. I want you to do a job of work for me, Maisie. This is what's happened. About a month ago, the 4th of August, a man named Frederick Adams was found dead close to St. Pancras Station. He'd been shot, point blank, through the back of the head. The position in which he was found, together with a post-mortem, suggested that he was made to kneel down, hands behind his head, and then he was executed. So he could well have seen his killer, said Maisie. It has all the hallmarks of a professional assassination. I suspect that is the case. Tell me about Adams, said Maisie. 38 years of age. He worked for the railway as an engineer at the station. He was married to an Englishwoman, and they have 2 children, both adults now and working. The daughter's a junior librarian. She's 18 years of age, and the son, who's almost 20, has now, I'm informed, joined the army. Maisie nodded. What does Scotland Yard say? Nothing. War might have been declared today, but it broke out a long time ago, as you know. Scotland Yard has its hands full. A country on the move provides a lot of work for the police. But they are investigating, of course. Yes, Maisie, they are investigating. But the detective in